Hi, my name is Aaron, this is my show Reeducation, and today we're going to talk a little bit about Jimmy Dore, AOC, and Medicare For All. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so over the last week or so, there's been a lot of controversy, a lot of hullabaloo about AOC, Jimmy Dore, and this whole trying to push Medicare For All through the House idea. Now, if none of you know really about what I'm talking about, basically what's going on is an online comedian named Jimmy Dore is trying to pressure all of the so-called social democrats or socialists in the government to force a vote in the House for Medicare For All. Essentially, the idea is to hold Nancy Pelosi's speakership seat hostage and not allow her to become Speaker of the House again unless she allows Medicare For All to be brought to the floor of the House and voted upon. And I personally think that this is a really good idea. But there are a whole lot of arguments against it, and I'm going to go through a lot of them now. Some of them are really quite good, and some of them are absolutely, positively atrocious. But before we get into that, I just want to say that the backlash from all of this has been really distressing. A lot of leftist infighting has been going on just because people don't agree on this specific issue, and it's kind of ridiculous. I know that me and a lot of other people on the leftist Twitter sphere or in BreadTube or whatever don't really agree on this issue, but I don't find any reason for us to really fight over it. As far as I'm concerned, it's one idea that can work in conjunction with a lot of other ideas to actually make sure that people get health care in the middle of a pandemic. Now, you all know that I'm not exactly a big fan of electoralism. I've made a lot of videos about that in the past, but I do see there being a certain advantage to using this sort of method, at least to bring awareness to the idea, among other things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. Okay, the first point of contention that we'll cover is this whole idea about AOC and Jimmy Dore fighting being akin to leftist infighting. Now, there is leftist infighting going on, obviously. I was just talking about that. But Jimmy Dore and AOC getting into it, or Jimmy Dore attacking AOC or verbally haranguing her, is not leftist infighting. That is literally just holding a politician accountable. It doesn't matter how much you love AOC, and I know a lot of people do. It doesn't matter how much you think that she believes that her intentions are good and that she is going to do the right thing for the people. And it doesn't even matter that she's done the right thing for the people in the past. What matters is that she is a person that is in power, and she should be held accountable on every one of her actions. This isn't a case like we can give her the benefit of the doubt on all issues because she's being right on a few. This is a case where she has actual power. She's one of the most powerful people in the United States. People that are in the federal government are literally the most powerful people, or at least on paper, in the United States. So it is imperative that no matter if you like her or not, or like anybody in the government or not, you have to hold their feet to the fire. That's the whole point. As far as I'm concerned, I would prefer that this whole electoral system was abolished and we didn't even use politicians at all. In fact, we should be voting on policy rather than politicians, but we live in the world that we live in, and in the world that we live in, people need Medicare for All right now. People need things passed through this shaky government system right now so they can actually live reasonable lives and not die. That's kind of where we're at right now. And holding politicians accountable, forcing them to do things, is what you have to do. Obviously, you're never going to get everything passed through voting. I've always told you that I don't personally think that voting is the be-all, end-all, is the thing that is going to change everything. What really changes things is people on the ground, people agitating, people getting together in massive groups and shutting shit down. That's how you change things. That's how we change things all throughout history. That's what changed things in the civil rights era in the 1960s. That's what changed things with the feminist movement. That's what changed things even with the Civil War ending slavery. It wasn't about individuals in government making legislation, though a lot of liberals would like to make you think that it is. It was about powerful people's movements moving things forward. And in our ideal situation, in my personal ideal system, a politician or a representative, not a politician, but somebody that represents the people, should be doing exactly what the people themselves want. And clearly there's a lot of traction behind this whole idea about forcing the vote through, so clearly you can see a lot of people actually do want that to happen. Whether or not her constituents in her area want that to happen, I don't personally know the numbers on that, but I'm sure a lot of them do, and if they were to hear the arguments for it, I'm sure a ton of them would be on the same side as that. But as far as politicians are concerned, they should be doing what is within the will of the people. They're not there to serve their own interests. They're not there to further their own careers. And we're not supposed to be doing things that allow them to just become more and more powerful without exerting that power in some way. That's how you leverage power properly. It seems like a lot of people don't seem to know how power works. Now, there are some arguments that are very good against doing this sort of thing. And like I was saying, there are a lot of arguments against it. So let's talk about some of those. The first argument that I hear all the time, which is a horrible, horrible argument, is that if AOC or anybody in the squad tries to pass this idea, this force the vote idea, that they'll lose their job. No, that's not how the government works. They were elected by the people in their districts and so forth. So those people are the ones that will hold them accountable or not. Just because they want to pass a vote or just because they don't want to pass a vote or whatever it is, doesn't make them lose their job. They were already voted for, so they won't lose their job. At least hopefully not. If they're in overwhelmingly blue districts, they probably won't. Some people could because of different reasons, but still, that's not how they lose their job. It's not like Nancy Pelosi is their boss. But that does lead to the next argument where a lot of people are saying, oh, but if they do this, then they're going to lose a whole lot of power within the government. If they don't go along to get along, then they won't be able to work with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all of these other evil, terrible lizard creatures and get things passed. Again, that's not really an issue because already we can see that they are not allowing anybody in the squad or anybody that's a social progressive or a democratic socialist or whatever in government actually do anything. In fact, even when AOC was saying that she couldn't do this force the vote thing, a couple of days later, she ended up losing, I believe it was a committee assignment anyway. She ended up losing power even though she was agreeing with the establishment, because the establishment has absolutely no intention of allowing any social progressive or any socialist ideas through the government at all, ever. They're always going to try to block it. That's kind of like what the government's there for. So will they lose some sort of power within the establishment? No, they never really had any power within the establishment anyway. Nobody in the establishment wants to work with these people because they want radical things. Even though they're far, far less radical than anything I would ever want, they're still far more radical than any of the conservatives would want or any of the liberals would want. So it's not even entertained. They're not given any power anyway. And if it is the case that they do get some power, it's overwhelmingly just kind of throwing a bone at the base to say, hey, yeah, here's a fake-ass committee assignment or whatever. Chew on that for a little while. It's technically power. It's never really actually power. And if you want examples on that, you can just look at Bernie Sanders and all of the different things that the Democrats apparently did for him that amounted to him having absolutely zero influence whatsoever over what they did. And then, of course, there's the ad hominem attacks that everybody's throwing at this argument that essentially boil down to Jimmy Dore is too mean, therefore I don't think that healthcare is necessarily important, or Jimmy Dore endorsed Tulsi Gabbard, who is objectively a horrible, terrible TERF, and that makes his arguments as far as Medicare for All completely invalid. And the thing is that I really don't agree with either of these arguments. As far as I'm concerned, they're nothing more than ad hominem attacks at best and guilt by association at worst. Now, I will admit, Tulsi Gabbard has come out with some absolutely horrendous ideas over the last few weeks. She decided to pass some legislation, or is trying to pass some legislation that is extremely anti-trans rights. And she's also come out with ideas that are anti-abortion as well, which completely blows my mind. Now she's completely lost all credibility, and as far as I'm concerned, is, a horrible person. But that doesn't make the Medicare for All vote all of a sudden not important. It doesn't all of a sudden nullify the fact that people need this sort of thing in the middle of a pandemic. Tulsi Gabbard is horrible, and the fact that Jimmy Dore endorsed her is, shitty. It's really shitty. I fucking hate it. But it doesn't mean that the Medicare for All thing is wrong. It just means that Jimmy Dore was wrong. And Jimmy Dore is wrong all the time. On this specific instance, though, I don't think that he is. And no matter if you hate him or you hate the fact that he's mean or any of these things, you should be looking at the ideas themselves and basing them off of their own merits and not throwing away the idea just because it comes from a source that was less than good. Good ideas can come from bad people, and bad ideas can come from good people. It doesn't necessarily mean that the idea is good or bad. The idea is just an idea, and we should be wise enough to be able to use good ideas wherever we see them. And not to mention, like I was saying a moment ago, since there's really no repercussions from all of this, I don't really see any strong reason why you shouldn't do it. Other than one argument that was brought up by Lance from the Serfs. Now, Lance is a brilliant, wonderful guy, and I think that he's really, really smart, and I think that he works really hard to further leftist unity. And I love Lance. Lance, I love you, man. And Lance brings up a wonderful point. Basically, even if this was to pass through the House, it would never get through the Senate. And even if it did get through the Senate, it would never go past Joe Biden. He's already spoken about how he would veto it the second it crossed his desk. So we already know that doing this won't actually make real policy changes. Damn, that's a good argument. I mean, I can't really say that it would. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to make it through the Senate. And Joe Biden would never pass this sort of thing. Obviously, there is, a 1 in a million chance that these people would grow somewhat of a heart in that black cavity of a soul that they have, and they would see that people need Medicare for All in the midst of a pandemic, and they would see that so many people want it, that they were willing to sacrifice this sort of thing and that sort of thing to get it, but the likelihood of that is actually small. So, essentially, this whole vote would be a big spectacle, a big show, without really being able to have the teeth to force through a vote past the Republicans. Okay, well, yeah, that is a good point, and it hurts. Until you realize that being a show, being a spectacle, being a great big theater project tends to work. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed this, but most of the time, whenever you have a great big spectacle, a great big show, a great big theater project, it tends to get people motivated. It tends to get people's eyes on a project, and it tends to get things passed. What was Donald Trump more than just pageantry, just a big spectacle, a big show? But at the end of the day, the show ended up producing results, and he became president, and then continued that show for entirely too fucking long. And what exactly was it that Bernie Sanders was doing all across 2016, and even later now into this election, when he was trying to push for radical ideas like Medicare for All, and a jobs bill, and $15 minimum wage, and blah, 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 blah. All of these things were all just a spectacle, all just a show, until it wasn't. Until he was able to take the ideas that he had and shift that Overton window towards a place where we would have those things. And a lot of it came out of basically performative votes. A lot of it came out of performative ideas that Bernie Sanders could say later on that he was right on this issue, or he didn't vote for that thing, or he voted for this thing. He consistently did things that he knew wouldn't pass or would never have a chance of getting through, but he did them because they were the right thing to do. And he did them, at the end of the day, for a little bit of pageantry. That's why a lot of people back in 2016 said that Bernie Sanders was unflappable, that he basically had a record that was 100% spotless. It's because he always fought for the right things. That's the right thing to do. When you're fighting for the right thing, it's the right thing to do. And it brings me back to something that Christopher Hedges says, basically in regards to fascism. He says something along the lines of, we don't fight fascism because we know that we will win. We fight fascism because it's fascism. You fight it because it's the right thing to do. You don't do the right thing because you think you're going to get some sort of reward or you think you're always going to get exactly what you want. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So could this end up passing through the House, through the Senate, and through the presidency and getting everybody Medicare for all? Maybe. Under, like, the most unbelievable circumstances, it's possible, but, probably not. But at least at the end of the day, you'd be able to see who actually fights for it and who doesn't. You'd be able to actually see who actually is involved and eager in getting people healthcare in the middle of a pandemic and who's just using it as lip service to get elected. And a lot of people are trying to say, oh, well, this is creating some sort of rift where if you don't go along with Jimmy Dore's idea, then you're basically a traitor to the left. No, I don't think anybody has said that. At least I've never said that. But if you don't go along with the idea of getting people Medicare for all in the middle of a pandemic, and you would rather just further your career, then obviously that would be a very telling situation. That would show people that you don't really care that much about them. You care more about your career. And that's indicative of how politicians act. It's indicative of how this system is created. And you're meant to feel bad or to feel like you're doing something wrong every time you go against that structure. But you have to force those sorts of things. You have to force politicians to acquiesce to what you believe in. Because power concedes nothing without a demand. So you have to demand the powerful to do the right thing. And if they don't, you have to make them realize that there will be consequences. Now, obviously, this pageantry, this show, this spectacle alone won't do anything, obviously. But it's important to get people motivated, to get people active, and to get people invested in the idea of fighting for Medicare for all, or any sort of thing. Personally, I don't think that Medicare for all is the be-all, end-all best solution to everything. I think that it's basically just putting a Band-Aid over a capitalist system that has a gushing, bloody wound. What you need is a complete reorganization of the entire structure, but barring that happening right now, I would rather make sure that the slaves have a little bit better treatment until we can find a way to make them no longer be slaves. Anyway, man, so like I was saying, this isn't about leftist infighting. This isn't about fighting one another. It's a tactical idea. And as far as I'm concerned, we need to have the people on the ground, the people on the front lines, actually pushing for these sorts of things, because that's where that's really going to make a change. All of this stuff in the political realm, all of this stuff in the government is just fiction. It always is. It's never actually real. They never give you anything that you actually want unless you force them to. Like I said, slavery wasn't ended because of a politician. Jim Crow wasn't ended because of a politician. It was all achieved by you. It was all achieved by the people fighting together to get something that they need. At least that's the way that I look at it. If you do get a chance, please check out all the links in the description box below. Hit the little bell button because you know that they're not going to tell you when I release a new video. And make sure you're subscribed because they're unsubscribing people every single day. And by the way, I've been doing a lot of community outreach and activism and that sort of thing. And I have a GoFundMe for my direct action fund. So if you want to fund the projects that we like to work on here on the channel, then definitely check us out down there. Shoot us some money so we can put it towards some good things. And with all that being said, thank you very much. Have a nice day.